piece of news. A lot of news has dropped since my last episode with Max Barr, and it was just recorded on Friday. So a lot of news has happened the last couple of days. But some more unfortunate news for the Alabama basketball team. And Yay Alabama and Nate Oates announced that Jalil Bethea had an injury and had to have a surgery, and it's not gonna be a season-ending injury, but is gonna be missing a couple of weeks of the season. That was originally all we had heard. I have heard some potential rumors that it may be something as simple as a broken toe that had to be fixed, and that he may not miss quite as much time as I think some people obviously jumped to conclusions when it all came out. Have you heard really anything about that? Obviously I know that Alabama's going to be without him for a little bit of the season, but what are, some people kind of saying about that injury front?
Yeah, I've heard something similar about the toe. And I will say, with Nate Oates in regards to injuries, in some ways he's more upfront than like Kalen DeBoer with football injuries, but then also Nate will like just kind of straight up lie about how long a guy's going to be out. Like he'll be like, yeah, it's going to be like months. And then like 2 weeks later, he's on the court. And you're like, so, who knows what to expect with this injury or really how long it'll be. I think they like to be like cautiously optimistic and like give it a longer date than like it's really going to be with a lot of these injuries, because like they don't want to have the pressure of like rushing a guy back. But it's almost like there's this weird like, I don't know, hex on Alabama basketball that these guys every offseason there just has to be like the random injury that's gonna like keep a guy out from the start of the year. It's like Nate has had so much success with some transfer portal guys, but then also like so many of these transfers come in and get hurt before they can even play, and it's like they eventually get to play, but it is a little weird that we keep having these off-season injuries every year.
Yeah, and based on kind of what you're saying right there, based on some of what I've heard, this is not the first time I've heard, oh, this is a nagging injury
Mm-hmm.
that Nate has almost urged the player to get fixed. Like, hey, it almost feels like Nate is prioritizing long-term health and long-term success of the player and long-term ability to compete throughout the course of the season, knowing that it's a very long season, over having somebody available for a gauntlet in November, right? Because
Yeah.
if anybody hasn't seen the schedule, we've talked about it on this show. It is an absolutely brutal November, and even if you are optimistic on Jalil's return, he's going to miss a couple of games. And the second game of the year is against St. John's. So, I mean, this is, at a minimum, he's going to miss some very large games. So I think that's, it really speaks to Nate's, thought about what he cares, how much he cares about the players and cares about the long-term success, because he could very much be like, no, I have to have you. Like, you're just going to gut through it for the season. And it really feels like, again, like this isn't the first time you've heard this is a nagging thing that he kind of urged them to get fixed. Maybe this is something more than that. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it just feel like I've heard that a couple of times with some of these injuries.
Yeah, that's another thing about Nate Oates is that like, I mean, and to be fair to him, like there's not necessarily a great incentive to be super honest with the media about like injuries because of the competitive advantage, and then also just like kind of what does he gain out of it. But he is with players, because every year there's guys that might need to redshirt for whatever reason, for medical reasons, or just like they're not going to get the playing time. He says he leaves it up to them and their family. He kind of lays it out for them. Okay, like here's what's best for you. Here's how much your playing time you're probably going to get, and like here's what needs to be fixed. And it kind of seems to be the same way with some of these nagging injuries, that like he's kind of upfront with guys about this is what's best for you, and he's really looking long term what's best for the player instead of maybe some of the immediate needs of the team. Because like you hit on, it is Alabama never just kind of slowly dips into the season with NATO scheduling. It's especially this year, it's going to be tough. And so of course you'd like to have a guy like him, but I think Alabama also has other options at guard, and I think that's where getting Houston Millette back after some of his injuries he went through when you weren't necessarily expecting him to have another year. Latrell Wright's the same thing, that it kind of helps with some of the other pieces they have in place.
Yeah, and kind of what you mentioned right there, for Alabama fans that are kind of question, Jalil Bethea obviously is kind of the new noteworthy piece on the transfer portal. Him and Taylor Bowen were kind of the diamonds in the transfer portal. Not to speak poorly of the other two guys by any stretch, because I think that Keaton and Noah are going to make some contributions, absolutely. But I do think that Jalil Bethea and Taylor Bowen had immediate starter type implications when they were signed to the roster. And, so a lot of people are going to question, what happens to the roster now with Jalil Bethea. And in my mind, I think that comes from three places. And you mentioned two of them. I think that Houston Millette He is obviously a huge impact getting him back for another season. Me and Max Barr talked about that. Like Houston Millett is a guy that, by anyone who's ever talked to him has said he's probably going to be a coach someday. Obviously, his dad's an athletic director. He's grown up in athletics. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. Like really, really cool to listen to if you ever listen to his podcast and stuff. Like I really, really like Houston. Latrell Wrightsell, again, another guy you're getting back from injury that you didn't fully expect. Neither one of these two guys, it's kind of odd that you're replacing the one injury with two that are coming back from injury from last season. And then finally, I think Amari Allen. And I think that Amari Allen is the guy who you've heard the most, some of the most raved by the coaching staff out of summer practice. Some of the things, people that have been to summer practice, you've heard really good things about him. But I think just that size, I think that he is going to be a perfect size to kind of slide into that Jalil Bethea role. Will he be a starter? No, right? Like I would expect Houston or somebody to definitely step into the starter role. But I think that you're definitely going to see some extra minutes out of Amari, early in the season because of the, hole that was left by Bethea.
Yeah, and like we already talked about with all the injuries they've had in the past, this isn't like a new problem for Nate to figure out about where to like plug and play guys. So he kind of has experience with fitting guys in where they need to go when, or kind of making the most out of the lineups he can with, who he has available.
Absolutely. And I also would say it's kind of a standpoint of it's a very different predicament when the guy is injured going into the first game of the season than if they get injured the week, the day before or something. Like Nate Oates is somebody who, from an analytics perspective, he knows what his best lineups are. And so if he has time to prepare on not having a guy, like I'm completely confident that he's going to be ready to go first game of the season. This is also why you recruit guys and get Houston Millett and Trelly and all these guys back, because Nate Oates has had enough injuries that he's suspecting somebody's going to go down. You don't want it to happen. You hope that you can go season injury free, but realistically, somebody's going to go down. This is a sport that has injuries, and that's just how the game happens. And he doesn't want a single injury to kind of derail the whole season. So I think that Nate fully prepared for this in constructing the roster. And so, I think that they're more prepared for this than they would have been, else, in other seasons to a key player.
Yeah, which is kind of a hard balance in college basketball these days.
So kind of while we're on the...
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Keep going. No, you're good.
He's not going to fill like the 13 scholarship spots most years just because most guys don't want to be number 12, 13 on the bench, but you do have to have guys ready too. And that's something he's been able to do really well the last couple of years is roster management construction and making sure you kind of have those guys ready in case other guys go down.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it's a very tough thing. It's something that I think that Nate has done some of the best in the country about it, because he's really embraced, he gives everyone a chance to play the minutes, right? Even if you're number 11 or 12, like you're going to get out there. And, we have seen in multiple instances where a guy gets out there and he's 12 on the roster, but he plays really well and he earns himself additional minutes. So it's kind of a situation where it feels like Nate has an idea of how he wants to play with the roster, but then he doesn't let his preconceived notions control how he's going to actually dictate the roster. And I think players, are very happy about that and are open to allow him the chance to, be coached by them or to coach them, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So while we're